Do forgive me, this is not going to be a very well structured and thought out presentation, and it is in many ways impromptu. But there's a reason why it resembles this form. It's because the terrain that I'd like to, in some ways, broach upon is not structured, or it's not laid out before us. It's not a review in any way. In departments of literature, at least, I think that it is commonly acknowledged that we do owe something of a debt to the schools and traditions of thought that have come before us. And I'd like to single out one name in particular, Frederick Jameson, as somebody who has been able to review the work that was done in the past and synthesize it in a way that becomes meaningful and transmittable to a new generation. And I think this is one of the key functions that literature departments and English faculties do. But in referring to the works of the past and in trying to assimilate what their teachings were, what may be the main features that we can highlight that constituted his subject matter? I think, for instance, looking at the issue of naturalism and the gold standard and notions of value and the question of how experiences become transmittable to each other only when they congeal into certain forms that are recognizable, forms of communication. Issues such as these are what drew the gaze of Frederick Jameson in his efforts to try and synthesize, or rather resynthesize, something resembling what was once spoken of, or perhaps is still spoken of, as a dialectic. So at some point, I guess what we are trying to contend with are what are the ways in which human perception is able to synthesize or cognize alien experiences, experiences which it does not have a foothold in, third person accounts. And this is honestly where literature comes alive, because it is almost always a medium that deals with the third person. It is not about either you or me here, but about a gaze that may one day rest upon this conversation and how that gaze is able to understand it. Now, for such a perspective, for such a gaze, what can we do to make an exchange between us today, here, now, meaningful? And the only way that we can actually try and think that is by trying to assimilate what may yet be recognizable at that moment in the future, that is a product of what we have done amongst ourselves with each other today. So in some ways it is an assimilation of the forms that media takes that may still last at a point in time in the future where a certain message may be reviewed or looked on backwards from a point in time which we don't have access to. Now, this may seem like a mouthful, and honestly, it is, because at some level, every writer, every artist thinks about the future when they do produce a work of art. Even when they think about the past, it is how the past itself is reinvented. What in the past can be transformed to become a model, a message, a medium, a tale that you would like to carry forth into the time to come. And in these lines, you may glean what is perhaps a prophetic, a messianic edge to the kind of work that happens in these departments of literature. And I shudder to think what college departments, what universities would be like without figures such as Zizek, without figures such as Frederick Jameson, who are able to plumb the past to find these kernels of what some may call radical messianic time, of media that was written at a point where what was considered was precisely a point in the future where the negative, so to speak, would be fully synthesized. Now, I think being able to do such work requires certain forms of organization. You would require a department that is committed to such an endeavor, because you would need to be able to free yourself from some of the more immediate concerns that are often thrust upon any kind of collegiate or even school setting. And I guess there may be many kinds of objections raised to this issue. You may say that this would be a matter that is best left to theology departments, but honestly, there aren't very many theologically inclined departments, and the extent to which they deal with con- contemporary issues is also debatable, to say the least. I want to be able to put this out there to share what is a concern of mine, because I don't really see the thinkers who are actually going to be able to meet these challenges emerging in the international academic sphere, so to speak. Maybe it's just my short sightedness. Maybe I haven't kept abreast with the developments that are happening in universities, in colleges, perhaps even in schools these days. Maybe this will change. I will be joining a school shortly, and perhaps being in the presence of inquisitive minds will refresh some of these perspectives. But presently, as of now, this remains a concern, and it's something that I wanted to be able to share with you in some form. I wanted to be able to create a small archive of it, as it were. And if you do come across this, and if these questions in some ways have meant or do mean something to you, please do get in touch and let's see what we could in some ways share and learn from each other. It would be a pleasure. Thank you.